Dr. Phil McGraw had built a career on reading people. 30 years of sitting across from individuals in crisis had given him an almost supernatural ability to detect lies, spot denial, and sense when someone was holding back the most important part of their story. He'd heard confessions that would make most people uncomfortable. He'd witnessed breakdowns, breakthroughs, and everything in between. But that afternoon, when Rebecca sat down across from him, something felt different. She was 42. Dressed conservatively. Hair pulled back. Minimal makeup. The kind of woman who'd learned to make herself invisible. She sat with perfect posture, hands folded neatly in her lap, answering Dr. Phil's opening questions with practiced precision. Yes, she was married. 2 children. Worked as an accountant. From the outside, everything looked normal. Stable. Fine. But Dr. Phil had learned long ago that fine was often the most dangerous word in the English language. Rebecca. Dr. Phil said, leaning forward slightly. You wrote to us 3 months ago. You said you needed help processing something from your childhood. But when my producers called, you almost backed out. Why? Rebecca's hands tightened slightly in her lap. The first crack in the perfect composure. Because talking about it feels like disobeying. Dr. Phil's eyebrows raised. Disobeying who? Everyone. The studio was quiet. Not the dramatic silence of a reveal, but the confused silence of an audience trying to understand a puzzle with missing pieces. Dr. Phil set down his note cards. He wasn't reading from a script anymore. This had gone somewhere unplanned. Walk me through that, Dr. Phil said carefully. Who told you not to talk about your childhood? Rebecca took a breath. My parents. My husband. My therapist. They all said the same thing. That dwelling on the past was unhealthy. That I needed to move forward. That bringing up old pain would just cause problems in my present life. She paused. So I stopped. I stopped talking about it. I stopped thinking about it. I tried to forget. And did you? Forget? Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. No. You can't forget. You can just pretend you forgot. And eventually, everyone believes you. Even you start to believe yourself. Dr. Phil paused mid-sentence. The studio went completely silent. The cameras kept rolling, but something had shifted in the energy of the room. Dr. Phil set his note cards aside completely. Leaned back. Studied Rebecca with the kind of focus that made it clear this was no longer a standard interview. This was something else. What happened to you, Rebecca? She looked down at her hands. I was 7 years old. My uncle, he lived with us for 2 years. And during that time She couldn't finish. Didn't need to. The implication hung in the air. Several audience members gasped softly. Dr. Phil's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. Did you tell anyone? I told my mother. When I was 9. After he'd moved out. Rebecca's voice was steady now, like she'd rehearsed this part 1,000 times in her head. She sat me down and said that talking about it would destroy our family. That my father would blame himself for not protecting me. That my uncle would go to jail, and it would shame everyone. She said the kindest thing I could do was forget it ever happened. And you were 9 years old. Yes. So you tried to forget. Yes. Dr. Phil stood up. Walked to the edge of the stage. Looked directly at the audience, then at the cameras. Stopped the tape. The red recording lights went off. Confusion rippled through the studio. Producers were speaking urgently into headsets. The audience shifted uncomfortably. But Dr. Phil ignored all of it. He walked back to his chair. Sat down. Not in the host position. Closer. Leaning toward Rebecca. Rebecca, what I'm about to say is for you. Not for the cameras. Not for the audience. For you. Is that okay? She nodded, confused. You were 7 years old when this happened. 9 when you told someone. And instead of being protected, instead of being believed, instead of being helped, You were told to forget. To be silent. To make yourself smaller so that other people could be comfortable. That's not kindness. That's not protection. That's betrayal. Rebecca's careful composure cracked. Tears started falling. But they said, I don't care what they said. They were wrong. Completely, devastatingly wrong. And you've spent 33 years carrying that trauma alone because the people who should have helped you decided their comfort was more important than your healing. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning. Dr. Phil reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. This is the number for a trauma specialist. She works specifically with adult survivors of childhood abuse who were silenced by their families. You're going to call her. Today. Not next week. Today. Rebecca took the card with shaking hands. But my family, your family had their chance to do right by you when you were 9 years old. They chose wrong. Now you get to choose. And choosing to heal, choosing to speak, choosing to remember, that's not betrayal. That's survival. Dr. Phil stood. Gestured to the producers. Turned the cameras back on. The red lights returned. The audience had no idea what had just been said in those off-camera moments. Dr. Phil walked back to his position. Professional. Composed. Like he just stepped away for water. Rebecca has agreed to begin trauma-focused therapy. Dr. Phil said to the cameras, his voice firm. Because here's what we need to understand, forgetting trauma doesn't heal it. Silence doesn't protect you. And being told to erase your own history to make other people comfortable is not love. It's control. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. The audience erupted in applause. Not polite applause. The kind of applause that comes from recognition. From people who'd also been told to forget, to move on, to stop bringing up the past. Rebecca was crying openly now. Not hiding it. Not apologizing for it. Just letting it happen. Dr. Phil sat back down. Rebecca, I want you to understand something. Your mother told you that talking about what happened would destroy your family. But the truth is, what happened already destroyed something. It destroyed your sense of safety. Your ability to trust. Your belief that the adults in your life would protect you. And asking you to forget, asking a child to carry that burden silently, that caused even more damage. Rebecca nodded. I know. I think I've always known. But saying it out loud feels like I'm the one causing the problems. You're not causing problems. You're revealing problems that already existed. There's a difference. Off camera, Dr. Phil made a choice no producer expected. He stood up again. Walked to the back of the stage where the production team sat. Spoke quietly but firmly. I need the family contact information. Mother. Husband. I want them here. Tomorrow if possible. One of the producers started to protest. Dr. Phil, we haven't vetted. I don't care. This woman has been silenced for 33 years. If her family wants to keep participating in that silence, they can do it on camera where everyone can see it. Or they can show up and do better. Their choice. He walked back to Rebecca. Your husband. Does he know? I told him before we got married. He said it didn't matter. That it was in the past, and we should focus on our future. Did he ask how you felt about it? Rebecca paused. Thought. No. He just moved on. Like it was a fact about me. Like saying I was from Ohio or that I'm allergic to shellfish. Just information. Not trauma. Dr. Phil's expression hardened. That's not support. That's avoidance. And I'm going to tell him that. Tomorrow. Here. Rebecca looked panicked. But he'll be angry. Let him be angry. You've spent your whole life managing other people's emotions about your trauma. It's time someone managed yours. The audience was riveted. This had gone far beyond a typical episode. Dr. Phil had essentially hijacked his own show, turned it into something raw and unscripted and real. The producers were probably having heart attacks in the control room. But Dr. Phil didn't care. This mattered more than format. Rebecca, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think before you answer. When was the last time someone asked you how you're doing and actually waited to hear the answer? Rebecca opened her mouth. Closed it. Thought. I don't know. Exactly. Because you've been trained to be fine. To not cause problems. To forget. But here's what I need you to understand. Remembering isn't the problem. The abuse was the problem. The silence was the problem. You speaking up, you seeking help, you refusing to keep carrying this alone, that's not the problem. That's the solution. But what happened next is something no one in the room, or watching at home, saw coming. From the audience, a woman in her 50s stood up. She was crying. Dr. Phil, can I say something? Dr. Phil looked surprised but nodded. Of course. The woman looked at Rebecca. I'm 56 years old. And when I was 8, the same thing happened to me. With my grandfather. And my grandmother told me to never speak of it. That it would kill my grandfather if anyone found out. That I needed to be strong and forget. Her voice broke. I'm 56. And I've never told anyone except my grandmother. Not my husband. Not my children. No one. Because I was told to forget. Rebecca was staring at her. The woman continued. But I didn't forget. I just got really good at pretending I did. And it's been eating me alive for 48 years. Another woman stood. Younger. Maybe 30. My stepfather. I was 12. My mother said bringing it up would ruin her marriage. So I didn't. I'm 31 now and I've been in therapy for 6 years trying to undo the damage of staying silent. Then another. And another. 5 women. All standing. All crying. All carrying secrets they'd been told to forget. Dr. Phil stood there, visibly shaken. This was beyond anything he'd planned. Beyond anything the producers could have scripted. This was collective trauma, finally finding permission to exist. He looked at the cameras. Directly into the lens. If you're watching this and you were told to forget, to move on, to stop dwelling on what happened to you, I need you to hear this. They were wrong. Trauma doesn't disappear because you stop talking about it. It just goes underground. It becomes depression, anxiety, relationship problems, trust issues. And the people who told you to be silent weren't protecting you. They were protecting themselves from their own discomfort. The studio erupted in applause. Not for entertainment. For validation. For permission. For the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, speaking the truth wasn't the problem. Dr. Phil sat back down with Rebecca. Do you see this? You thought you were alone. You thought you were causing problems by wanting to remember, by wanting to heal. But look around this room. You're not alone. And speaking up didn't cause these problems. Speaking up revealed how many people have been carrying this same weight. Rebecca was sobbing now. So were most of the women in the audience. So were some of the men. Dr. Phil let it happen. Let the grief and the relief and the recognition fill the space. When he finally spoke again, his voice was gentle. Rebecca, here's what's going to happen. You're going to start therapy. We're going to provide resources. I have a list of trauma specialists, support groups, books, everything you need. Your family is going to be invited to a session. And if they choose not to come, if they choose to keep asking you to be silent, then you're going to make some hard decisions about what relationships you can sustain, while also choosing yourself. He pulled a small notepad from his pocket. Wrote something down. Handed it to Rebecca. This is my personal email. Not my assistant's. Mine. If you need help, if your family pressures you to stay silent, if you feel like giving up, you email me. Directly. Rebecca stared at the paper. Why would you do this? Because someone should have done it when you were 9. And since they didn't, I'm doing it now. Share and subscribe. Some stories deserve to be remembered. The episode aired with trigger warnings. Thousands of emails flooded in. Rebecca started therapy. Her husband came to the follow-up session and walked out when Dr. Phil told him his avoidance was abandonment. Rebecca filed for divorce 3 months later. Her mother refused to participate. Rebecca stopped calling. But Rebecca also stopped pretending to forget. Started saying the truth out loud. Joined a support group. Connected with the women from the audience. And slowly, painfully, began to rebuild a life where her past wasn't erased. It was acknowledged, processed, and survived. Dr. Phil kept the notepad page. Framed it in his office. A reminder that healing begins when silence ends. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to forget. And that the people who ask you to erase your trauma aren't protecting you, they're protecting themselves. Rebecca's story didn't end with redemption. It ended with choice. The choice to remember. To speak. To heal. And that was enough.